Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Cloud Whisperers. I'm David Broussard,
And I am Brian Cheatham.
and we are back again for our 44th episode. And we've got a special guest later today, and we'll be bringing him in a minute. But before we get to that, Brian, what have you been up to lately?
It's always me, man, to have a funny story about my morning or so I had to replace a laptop at a construction site for a construction manager. And I met him out there early this morning about 7 a.m.
Okay.
When I got to the site, he told me to call him because he had to guide me in. So just picture the dirt mound parking lot that I'm getting ready to park in. Um, Excavators in my way, right? It's parked and nobody's in it or moving it. So I basically go through, park somewhere, and they had me move like 3 different times, park where I needed to. I went in and I replaced the laptop. It actually took me less time to replace the laptop than it took for me to find a parking spot.
That's awesome.
OneDrive sync with the backup of my documents and all that, or documents, is just beautiful.
That is great.
I get my truck to leave the dirt mound parking lot, right?
Mhm.
Now the excavator has somebody in it, and he's got the bucket and he's moving it around. And he had to move the bucket up so I could drive under it.
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
That would scare the heck out of me.
I know. And he's waving me on. I'm like, are you crazy? I mean, you've got a bucket over my truck. What if you sneeze or I don't know? All right. So it gets better. I'm almost done too. It gets better. So I go past the excavator, and then he's following me out because he has to park in the street. So he's behind me, and there's a line of cars in front of me. And I'm turning left. So one of the people is letting me go. Well, I didn't know that I had stopped on a garden hose that they were using. I stopped on a garden hose. My back tires are on the garden hose. And the one guy waves me in or whatever, and then there's a car coming. So I kind of peeled out and I ripped the garden hose.
Oh.
So the moral of the story is try and replace laptops or ship laptops to construction sites because yeah.
Well, that and I guess using autopilot would have been great too, right? Because then he just would have done it all himself, right? So
well, funny thing is I did use autopilot, but anyways.
that's good. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Well, that's a great story. And I was gonna talk about the present I got from my family gave me, but I think I'm gonna switch because you talked about how great it was to use OneDrive and get this guy going. My wife, who our listeners, and by the way, we have 10 subscribers on YouTube now, so we are double digits. This is freaking awesome. Okay. Our 10 subscribers may not know that my wife is an author. She's not a best-selling New York Times author or anything like that, but you can go find her books on Amazon, and she has written a 6-book series, and she's writing another, I think it's 7 books in this series that she's getting ready to try to get published. But she had decided to add a prologue to her current book, and she's set up and she's using Word, Microsoft 365 Word, right? And she decides to write the prologue in a new document, and then she was going to cut the entire 85,000 word book and then paste it into the document with the prologue. Yeah, I could have told her, don't do that. That's a lot of stuff. And evidently, back in the old days when you were running Word running on your desktop, it seemed to work better with this, right? But the Microsoft 365 version of Word, the click to run version, appears to have some issues with really large chunks of text. This is 370 pages of Word that she cut and pasted in there. And it went on her and deleted everything.
Oh no.
And she was like, I was downstairs doing something, getting ready to walk out the door, and suddenly I hear bloody murder, screaming, complete. And believe me, I completely and totally get it.
Oh, we've all been there.
I I overwrote an entire production SQL database one time through a misuse of the SQL Management Studio. But my wife suddenly has, months of work just go poof on her.
Yeah.
And I come upstairs, the dogs are all in there, everybody's in there, and I'm trying to find out what happened. And she's like, "It's gone, it's gone, it's gone." And I'm like, "Wait." And I go up to I look at the document, I go, "Yeah, it's right here." I hit Control Z, nothing happens because it was too big. And I go, "Well, that's fine. I'm gonna click the version history button because I have her store all of her stuff in M365 in the cloud, right?"
Yeah.
I click the version history button and I simply go back to 5 minutes earlier and say, "Restore." Boom, everything's back. And she's
Yeah.
like, "Oh." And then I told her, "We don't copy that much." And I said, "We're gonna," and so I had to do a little, I had to copy the prologue in before, but the prologue was a different document, and that's what she wanted the name to be. So we did a little rename the document, copy it, rename it back kind of thing. That was my one thing. I just thought that would go well with your story of excavators and uh
Garden hoses.
and destroying garden hoses. Oh my goodness. This is why you have general liability insurance, right?
Yeah. Exactly. That's right. I'm probably going to see the claim tomorrow
Oh my
sometime.
goodness. That is hilarious.
Oh, dude,
Hilarious.
you have no idea.
Well, I'll tell you, so today we have got a special guest, somebody I've known for a number of years, and he's going to come in here and talk about a topic that we have never talked about before, right, on the Cloud Whisperers. So I want to welcome to episode 44, Powering the Platform with Copilot, my friend Norm Young. Norm, good to see you, man.
Great to see you too as well, David. And thanks for
Yeah.
having me on the show. We've known each other for a few years, but it feels like we haven't really talked in like a few years.
Well, yeah, that has kind of happened. I mean, there were some changes at your employer
Hmm.
as you guys got acquired by AvePoint, which I think has been a great thing for you guys. And I know I've only heard good things about it. And of course, I also switched jobs after 16 years at one company. I'm with a new company now, and we haven't gotten to the point yet of partnering back up with you guys. But though I hope that that's something that we're going to be doing in the near future. So I'm really excited about talking to you again. And just to give a quick intro, I met Norm when he was working with Tygraph and was doing some great things with them. And Norm lives up in Canada. And if I remember correctly, it's like right behind your house or like a block away from your house is one of the Great Lakes, right? Am I remembering this correctly that you showed me that?
You're right. I'm from a city called St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada. And I
Mhm.
always say that with the expectation that no one knows what I'm talking about. And I will tell you that I've twice gone to the Power Platform Conference and I've twice spoken and I've twice introduced myself as coming from St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada,
Uh-huh.
expecting no one to know anything about it. And then after my session was done, people come up and say, "I'm also from St. Catharines." And I'm like, how is this even possible? How could there be more than one, Power Platform, Microsoft 365 enthusiast from
Yeah.
Catharines? But there is. But to go back to the question, where am I physically located?
Hmm.
Well, when I look out this window, which unfortunately you can't see, I can see over Lake Ontario and I can see the skyline of Toronto.
Oh,
Clear as
wow.
day. I can see the CN Tower and all the other landmarks of Toronto.
Wow. That's cool.
And if I look out the other window
Uh-huh.
on a clear day, you can see the mist coming up from Niagara Falls. So I'm kind of
Oh,
between two
Oh,
places.
wow.
wow.
Yeah,
That's
it's
awesome.
an interesting talking point, I guess, but
Yeah.
it's home, and it's
Yeah.
been home for a while.
Can you
That's
skip rocks from your back porch?
No, it is. I don't have the arm for that. These stands were made for blogging at best, not
I
for
like
throwing
it.
anything.
I like it.
That is great. Well, Norm, we've invited you here today for a number of reasons. You are obviously, you said you present and talk regularly at conferences. You know an awful lot about the Power Platform and are in fact an MVP in the Power Platform. Is that correct? I mean, am I remembering this correct? Right?
I'm an MVP, yes, but I'm an MVP in the Microsoft 365 apps and services.
Okay.
But I
Okay. There
spend
we
a
go.
lot of my time in the Power Platform because the
Okay.
reality is,
Yeah.
even though they're separate products and product teams,
Hmm.
the world doesn't work that way.
No,
You
that is
can't.
true.
It really is a better together story. So
Yeah.
you're not
Okay.
using Power Automate without Teams or SharePoint, or you're not using Dataverse without talking to the SharePoint file. Like
Sure.
it's all connected. So
Yeah.
I am an MVP. I spend a lot of my time in SharePoint and a lot of my time in the Power Platform, especially around Power Automate, Dataverse.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, I guess I had thought that you were MVP in Power Platform, but MVP in Microsoft 365 apps and services is, in my opinion, awesome because because that's where I spend up most of my time as well. But you as you said, you got to know when I got into Microsoft 365, I had to relearn my Exchange
Mhm.
stuff because you got to know that, and I had to learn the Skype for Business stuff way back in the when before Teams, right? And even even in Teams area, you got to know some telephony now, right? You
Yes.
don't have to know it deeply necessarily, but you got to know something about it.
Yes.
So we do have to. And Brian, and if for those of you that don't know Brian, he kind of is he runs his one man shop for small businesses, and so you got to know all that stuff
Yeah.
when you're the one man shop. That is really
Yeah.
where you really got to know a little bit of everything and a lot of bit of some things.
It's true. And
Yeah, absolutely. And it's
Yeah,
beautiful too when you can mention Power Automate and what you can do with it, and people are like, "I didn't know you could do that." It's like, yeah, you get it
yeah,
with your license. So,
yeah.
good stuff.
It's not exactly free, but it's kind of free. I mean,
Yeah,
you get
depends on what
2,000
you're doing.
activations per user kind of thing and stuff like that. So, but Norm, the reason we wanted to bring you on board is, we just had Ignite not that long ago, and I know you've been talking with other people about Ignite, and obviously ESC is going on while we're recording this podcast. So there's lots of new stuff coming out there as well. And of course that goes back to the whole fact that Microsoft is just this juggernaut now of constantly bringing out new things again and again and again, which is great. So the reason I bring all of this stuff up is, uh, in your area in working with the Power Platform, one of the places that Microsoft has been early in getting Copilot out the door has been in GitHub, right?
yep.
And also in the Power Platform. And I was completely and totally flummoxed recently when I was giving a demo to a customer and I went to go create a brand new Power Automate flow from a template, to show her, look how easy this is going to be. And suddenly I had the completely different authoring experience.
Yes.
Yeah. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what Microsoft has done in embedding some of this AI goodness into the Power Platform and Power
Yeah,
Automate.
absolutely. And it's very interesting. And it's something that I think we should spend some time talking about a little later in our time together. Is there's two types of AI that we're seeing under the umbrella of Copilot.
Mhm.
Um, the first one is the one that came out first, and it started rolling out like a year and a half, 2 years ago. And it's in the scenario that you describe inside of Power Automate and Power Apps, where you can have it help you generate code or help you generate expressions, depending on the platform you're using. So I was lucky enough to do some early testing with Power Automate, and it was in the expression building. And even if you're not familiar with what I'm saying, it's the expression builder inside of Power Automate is traditionally a very small window. You need
Yeah.
to know that exact syntax. There's no like compiler to give you help. There's nothing that is like easy about it. You
Oh,
have to be,
nothing easy.
no.
Nothing easy about that.
So you have to be very proficient with using your favorite search engine to find out how others have tackled this, or you need some of these new tools that they're bringing in. And so the new tools, one of the first things that they brought in that really caught my attention, and I couldn't believe how valuable it is expressions by example. So what I'm talking about is in these early days, you could take a field of or a string of data and say, I want this long string. Maybe it had like special characters in it, brackets, for example, and you want it to be broken apart without the brackets to have more of a cleaner formatting example. And you would put in the raw string and what you want it to look like, give it a couple examples, and it would generate the expression code for you. I was like, wow, this is amazing. It wasn't called CoPilot, it wasn't called AI. It was just, that's what it was. And expression building in Power Automate is one of those barriers to adoption. Makers are very tech curious. They're very proficient. They're very able to figure things out. But there comes a point in every technology where you hit that point where there's a real adoption, a traditional IT pro skill set that you have to learn. And expression building is that in Power Automate.
Yeah.
So that goes away. And I'm like, that's awesome. Now we see the same thing happening in Power Automate, like half a year later. But now we're seeing the inertia building with these latest large language models. And so what we're seeing in the Power Platform now is this breadth of copilots, of these code-based generative samples or code that you can bring in that will fast track your ability to build things. Now you can just describe what that you want that Power Automate to do, and it will generate something based on its references that it has to do what you want. And David, I think you said earlier that it's an iterative thing that you need to take, and it's a skill set that you have to develop. And so now you can iterate with what you're doing in there. And what's nice about what you're seeing with Copilot and the Power Platform is that it's not based on that second umbrella of Copilot or that second pillar of Copilot, which is based on your organizational data.
Mm-hmm.
This data, those code references, are based on public web. It doesn't have the same preparation time, security compliance time than you would expect if you were using Copilot in those traditional Microsoft 365 apps.
Yeah.
So, to sum it back all up, so what you're seeing now is, for starters, the majority of the Power Platform apps and services are maker first. That they enable people to do their own solution building. There are some that are still IT pro and will remain IT pro, like Power Pages and maybe even chatbots or whatever they're called, virtual.
Power virtual agents.
Yes, and that got a new name as well recently.
Oh, I'm behind the times. Oh.
Yes, you're behind the times by like a day or two, so don't feel bad. But it's nice to see
on the roadmap.
The Copilot features, if people take advantage of them,
Mm-hmm.
drop those barriers that would normally be in place for makers who need to take on more of those IT pro things. So, and I think that's the valuable thing. It's just going to enable Power Platform development in a faster way. Hopefully people are aware that it's even there, because it's like, there's a lot of digital noise in every canvas that we use, Outlook, Teams, Power Apps, Power Automate, no different. Hopefully they recognize that it's not just another banner on the screen, but it says Copilot, tell me what to do, and it can try to do that. And it's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you that the one thing that has always driven me absolutely bonkers in Power Automate is having to use compose statements.
Yes.
Where you get the JSON back from some action, right? And now I've got this nice JSON object, and now I've got to extract information from it. And I'll admit I probably just need to go out and take my friend Steve Corey's course on how to do JSON, right? then I would be like, oh, now I can do all of this stuff, right? But if you think about it, a person who doesn't know that stuff, right? And that's been the Power Automate problem all along. It can do either really simple things, and almost anyone can do a really simple thing in Power Automate, but a lot of organizations, a lot of end users, they start at that simple thing and they realize, oh, but now I need it to be a little bit more complex, right? It's not just, I need to send an alert to me. I need to send an alert to me based on some piece of metadata about the document, or I need to go in the document and extract the author so I can send them a notification.
Right.
And suddenly you're talking compose statements, right? And that gets to be a real pain in the butt.
Indeed.
I'm here.
Yeah, and what's interesting is I was recently working with a customer, and I don't get into Power Automate that often. I really don't. It's just when I see a use case or whatever, it's like, hey, this could probably work here. There's a connector for this application or whatever. Um, and just setting up just showing him just a little bit of how to go through it. This is a non-technical guy, right? Just this is how you build something and how you send an email and how you send a Teams message and all that. He was able to do a lot of this stuff himself.
Yep.
And expressions and all that is what really kind of hangs me up, right? I always do like 4 or 5 different Google searches to find the right one.
Bing. We only do Bing searches.
Yeah.
We're Microsoft people.
Bing. That's right. All right, let me close out my Google browser.
Yeah.
I know.
No, but I think, I mean, this stuff is really opening the door for non-technical folk. And I know that scares us sometimes, IT pros and all that. But there are a lot of possibilities out there. And when you just show somebody that, hey, you have this as part of, your Microsoft license, there's a lot of things that they can do with that and automate a lot of their workflow and everything.
Yep, agreed.
Yeah.
As long as the guardrails are in place, it's something that you would expect, you would hope that traditional IT pros would embrace. We've all heard this, alarming stat that there's this massive developer shortage, and organizations that have, had digital acceleration because of the pandemic, demand can't keep up, and IT, it just has to stick with the core services that they deliver with hosting, security, compliance, all those things. So opening the door to let people just start building organizational apps, services, can be scary. You want to make sure we have guardrails in place. But the nice thing about, circling this back to CoPilot is it is a remover of technical barriers. And I think in that pillar of CoPilot, where it's generating code from reference samples, it's kind of a safe step forward. You're getting the best of what others have done already.
Yeah. They banged on it for a while, and this is where they landed. Yep, I get it.
And so I'm familiar with that, or I've seen a little bit of it, and we talked a little bit about it on Power Automate. But is this also true in other aspects of Power Platform, like, for example, inside of Power Apps? Because one of my concerns, I mean, Power Apps is awesome, but it's not. I mean, I'm a traditional developer, right? I started out writing procedural code. I learned functional code much later, and it took me a while to get the paradigm shift in my head for it. And then Power Apps comes out, and I'm like, whoa, wait a second. I mean, what am I building these formulas for to do formatting? Why can't I just set the properties of this stuff?
Right.
And it was a bit of a mess. So is there integration with some of this CoPilot stuff in there as well? What does that look like?
I think what you need to ask yourself is, where isn't CoPilot coming in Microsoft 365 and the Power Platform? So to answer your question, yes, it is. It is in Power Apps, and it can generate sample apps through prompts. Tell it to build a help desk ticket tracking solution, and it's going to give you basic storage schemas, basic forms, navigation, all that type of stuff. And again, you'll have to inspect, you'll have to make sure attributes in the data model are what you expect, behavior formatting, all that type of stuff. You still have to go through it too. In some ways, it's an accelerator compared to the Microsoft List SharePoint embedded form experience, where you could say customize this form, and it would just go up and spin you up a starter app based on something you've already done. Now you don't have to have that already done piece inside of the list. So that's there. It's coming into areas like Dataverse. So in Dataverse, for example, it's very interesting. So Dataverse is loosely a cloud database solution that powers the Power Platform, but it's so much more. And but the nice thing about CoPilot and the demos I've seen, I have to stress, like, I'm no CoPilot expert. No one in the world is a CoPilot expert except for the engineers working on it at Microsoft. But right now, everything I see and know about CoPilot is coming through demos, just like many people on this call and the other 10 subscribers. Is that you can ask it to generate tables for you. Build me a sales invoice table, include these attributes, iterate through, generate some sample data. So when I'm doing rapid prototyping, rapid application development, or prototyping. You can have it build out your tables, populate it with sample data. And if you've done that, and I'll do that for my demos and the speaking engagements that I get, like that can be a time killer. And so even using like ChatGPT and not CoPilot, I can still like fast track some of that mundane work, or that work that I would normally consider not the best use of my time. And so it's fast tracking, and I think that's really the promise there. So Power Platforms, it's very interesting. I wouldn't expect the makers of the world to be like right on top of all of these Copilot announcements, because it's probably just static and noise from their perspective. They're in the business of doing.
I think you froze up.
Yes, we did.
Took him back.
There we go.
Yeah, there he goes.
Yeah,
there he is.
Yeah, well, it is snowing in Canada, so I mean, maybe that's the way to do it.
See, I thought Microsoft said he's about to break the NDA. We're just gonna. No, you would never. Nobody would ever do that. No.
Security Copilot in action.
Yes. The areas where I think it'll be more tangible beyond the makers in the Power Platform space are the users who will be lucky enough to get it in Microsoft 365.
Yeah,
I say lucky because there's a lot of things that have to happen for an organization to pick up Copilot for the M365 workloads.
Right.
And we were talking about that earlier. And what are some of the high level requirements, David and Brian, that we talked about in the pre-show?
Well, I think the biggest one that's going to throw a monkey wrench in organizations is the organization of taxonomy and security around their data, right? And it's not, and I say taxonomy, it's not just a function of having metadata tags on your documents, right? It is also having it so that Copilot and your users can easily find a document that they need to throw into the Copilot model so that it does something. And I was playing around with the Microsoft Designer, which is a tool they recently released, designer.microsoft.com, and you can use it to make images like you do with Dolly. And I used it to make the last show notes for episode 43, taking a bite out of the Apple Business Manager. And I no graphic skill whatsoever. I don't have it installed. I don't have Adobe on my machine or anything like that. But I went to Designer. I tossed in my profile picture, Brian's profile picture, the Apple Business profile picture, and said, make me a blog post, summary image, feature image about this episode. And I gave it the link to the episode. And the next thing I know, bam, it made a nice, could an actual graphic artist do a better job? Of course they could. But I'm not a graphic artist. And I don't, our budget on this show is $0, right? I mean, we don't have any sponsors. We don't intend to, right? It is, so it's a labor of love, and this let us go and build something very, very quickly and easily. And, what you mentioned, I'm thinking in terms of even in the Power Platform, if I can tell it, I need a form that connects to these Dataverse elements, right? I need a workflow that does these things, right? That's that code generative side. But when you get to talking about the productivity side, you've got to have well-defined and secured data. We have seen so many, and I know I've told Brian this in the past, and Norm, I'm sure you've experienced this as well. I've had so many customers call me up and say, search is broken. Got to turn search off. And I go, why? Well, I'm finding things I'm not supposed to be able to see.
Yeah.
Okay. So we go look at it. And in one of the examples, we're talking to this big company and they're finding, HR documents. And so I've discovered it was in a Microsoft 365 group. And we went there and said, well, it's a public group. I mean, you created the group and made it public.
Yeah.
And so these are visible to the whole organization. So this is really a training issue to let people know, don't do that.
Yep.
So I think that's going to be a huge barrier to get people to stop, to get to Copilot.
I agree. I had a similar experience at a previous employer where HR was like, we can see HR documents in Office 365? Where are
You're
you
supposed
seeing
to.
them? Yeah, you're supposed to, but where are you seeing them? And they're like, in Delve. And I'm like, oh, Delve. And let's take a look at that. And I'm like, because I can see all kinds of stuff too, but
Yeah.
I can't see the HR stuff. You can see it because of the security training and all that stuff. But
Yeah.
that brought up this whole change in thinking and how we secured content. Uh, Security through obscurity doesn't apply for the Graph API and applications that are powered by the Graph, like Delve and now CoPilot. So having well-governed data, good knowledge management policies, tools, enforcements, and so on, to make sure that you have the right data, discoverable data that's relevant to the organization is key. And that is that other pillar, if you will, under that CoPilot umbrella, where it's like we're basing it on organizational data. Better make sure that organizational data is in the form and fashion that you expect. Now, a lot of people went through this very large, rapid digital acceleration when the pandemic hit. We went from file shares and saving on desktops to OneDrive and Teams and Exchange Online, like in a matter of weeks. Like we accelerated so fast that organizations didn't have the opportunity to do all of that due diligence and planning that they would if they weren't under that type of duress in that scenario. And so now, the bills always do. And so those organizations that accelerated and stayed in a state of acceleration and now are contemplating something like Copilot for Microsoft 365, well, the bill is going to be due. And the bill is going to be, let's make sure that your content is secure. Let's make sure your content is identifiable. Make sure your content is relevant. And so this is where, now it's not about AI. It's a step back, and it's like, this is like traditional IT professional work around governance, due diligence, and security. And, prior to starting the recording, we were talking, Brian and David and I, about David's experience at his new company and trying to locate the appropriate slide deck for a customer presentation. And David, I think it's relevant to share that because it illustrates very well why you have the need to make sure your data is discoverable and identifiable in the correct way.
Well, and look, the company I work for, Cambay Solutions, is one of many Cambay companies, and we're all on the same tenant. Okay. So that's one challenge. And we have Viva Connections running. So in Teams, I just clicked on Viva Connections and there's a marketing link. So I went to the marketing page and there was a hot link there that said PowerPoint template. So I'm thinking to myself, this is what I'm going to use. Well, so I opened it up, created my presentation, presented it to the client, and I was getting ready to send it to him afterwards. And I realized that it had a different Cambay company name. And I was like, oh, I just used Cambay Consulting as opposed to Cambay Solutions. Now it's still Cambay. The client didn't notice it, right? But I realized I inadvertently had gone out and grabbed the wrong PowerPoint template for making a problem. Because it is a little bit complex when you have multiple people sharing the same tenant. But even if we didn't, I mean, we've all seen situations where marketing's, let's say marketing goes and creates a team site and throws that stuff in there, and then they don't make it public. I'm never going to find it. And if they do make it public, maybe they end up sticking stuff out there they don't want me to know. And how do I know which one is which? How do I know this is the current one? So there's a lot of ways we could solve that with content types, and we could solve that with, well-crafted intranets and all kinds of things. And Copilot can help with that. But if you have 15 versions of different PowerPoint, templates out there, and I tell it, go create a presentation using the Cambay template, right? How is it going to know which one to use?
That's the crux of the problem right there.
That is, so, when we were talking earlier, and I do want to bring this up because I just went through the training for the Copilot stuff that Microsoft has provided because I was fascinated by it. And it was actually a chance to kind of see it in action. with some videos that Microsoft has put together and some training. And there's a lot of stuff in there that was really, really fascinating. But I'll tell you the thing that really struck me was most people are sitting here going, wow, $30 a month.
Mhm.
That's a lot of money. I mean, I'm already paying 35 to 50 for my M365 E3 or E5 license. Now you want me to almost double that spend
Yep.
for my company. How do I justify that? Well, going through this training, I looked at it and I was like, okay, if this thing could actually build a PowerPoint presentation for me based off of an outline that I created or a Word document, or and then use the correct template and create section headings and do all of these things that it did in the training. Now, I'm gonna once again say that was in the training and I haven't gotten my hands on it yet, right? But my goodness, I'll write the check for $30 a month because it'll save me a heck
Yeah.
of a lot more than that amount of time that I spend doing scut work, right? Hunting down stuff and creating presentations or emails or whatever it is. I was telling my boss, I said, look, if the average information worker has a salary of, let's just say for our purposes, $60 an hour. Okay. That's probably low, especially when you're talking fully loaded with benefits and stuff like that. Right. But let's say $60 an hour, which is it's a decent salary for an information worker cost. Right. Well, if you take that cost and realize that if it saves you a half an hour a month, right, or increases productivity by half an hour a month, you just paid for CoPilot.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
I'm thinking it's going to do that every day. It's going to save you a half an hour. Now, it may take it 6 months to get to that point, right? We don't know.
Yep.
But boy, if the potential here is massive.
Yep.
If it works, and that's the big if, right? That's the
Yeah.
$64 billion question that
Mm.
Microsoft is betting the farm on, right? So Brian, go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's actually, the Microsoft partner who explains it best and finds the use case for the customer, right? That's going to be the A-list. That's going to be Microsoft's A-list partner, right? That's really
Mhm.
what it's about. It's just up to us to find that. And that's going to be the partner that sells the most, resells or however. I mean, that's the area, the side that I come from, and that's what I would be looking at with CoPilot.
Yeah.
So I've seen all of the marketing materials and the demos, whether they're at conferences or online, and the art of the possible with Microsoft 365 Copilot is amazing. Like these demos just blow your mind. Like it redefines what productivity looks like in these apps and services that we're used to using. So from my perspective, I take it at face value. I know it's not going to really functionally land for like 6 months to a year for me personally. And when it does, this is what I hope to get out of it. I hope to get rid of the deduplication of effort that I might do in a customer meeting where I'm taking notes, compiling them into some after meeting set of action items, and then having to follow
That's a good
it
example.
up. Yeah. And so if I can just do it once, whether it's in the meeting or my OneNote, and just be able to reference that source information and then push out action items, push out summaries, have a better set of notes. I mean, we all hear what we want to hear on some of these calls, and our notes reflect that. Or we make assumptions that we shouldn't make, and others may not be aware of those. So I look forward to that. I look forward to taking a day off of work and not be worried about missing out on an important meeting. So there's a Copilot feature called follow a meeting. So I don't have to say, yes, I'm going, or no, I'm not going. I'm just going to follow it. And you're going to send me after meeting report, recap, all that type of stuff. So I can get those executive summary bits of information that I can consume on a daily basis. And David has special guests jumping in all over the place. That's good.
I had both the dogs
You
decide
really
they
liked
wanted to
what
be.
you had to say, Norm.
I had both dogs decide they wanted to be on the podcast there.
That's great. And finally, the thing I look forward to is the trying to remove that blank slate syndrome that I sometimes suffer from, whether it's putting together a presentation or starting a Word document. And if I can just say, these are the points I want to convey, spit it out, and then I can, kick the tires and tell it what I don't like instead of what I wanted to do. And so, it takes a different approach. Instead of creating from 0, I'm going to create from 50 or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
So will it be worth $30 per user with a minimum buy-in of, 300 users? I think it will be for the right people. It will not be for some people that are stuck in their ways. They're not willing to take on a new way of working, or maybe their job function, it doesn't allow them to take advantage of tools like that.
Yeah. Well, and what do you do if you don't have 300 people in your tenant, right? Because I know plenty of companies that aren't that large. So yeah. So anyway, I think obviously we are all waiting with bated breath now to find out, to really get our hands on it and to let it run. I was the same way with Viva Topics, which I love in a lot of ways, but Viva Topics is another one that, until you actually see it in action, you just don't know what it's going to be like.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right. So, well, Norm, I want to thank you very much. You've been incredibly helpful in explaining this stuff and sharing some of your knowledge around this topic and some of your insights and things. But Brian, this does bring us to that time of the episode. Do you remember what time that is, Brian?
It's one last thing, many things.
Okay. One last many thing. There we go. I like that. We'll have to change it to one last many things. And so this is the point in the episode in which we talk about a topic, cultural, tech, maybe. And today, since Norm is joining us and he lives up in St. Catharines, Ontario, as he said earlier, right? It got me to thinking about the fact that Brian and I just did Thanksgiving last week. And I smoked a turkey for the first time, which had its ups and downs. But Thanksgiving in Canada is in October. Is it the first or second? It's Tuesday, isn't it? Not Thursday.
It's Monday. I think it's the second Monday of
second Monday. That's right. Okay. That makes sense, because then it becomes a long weekend, which is nice, right? Whereas we have it on a Thursday, and we all have to have Friday off as well. But so we thought we would really quickly kind of go down, some of the similarities and differences between Canada and the United States when it comes to Thanksgiving. So, is it turkey that you guys eat up there, or is it something different?
It is turkey. It is
turkey? Okay.
Very traditional in that way. So turkey, stuffing, mashed potatoes. You probably see that on every dinner table in every Canadian house of the people who might be celebrating Thanksgiving.
Cranberries as well, or not?
Yep.
Okay. Good.
Depends on the family.
Depends on the family. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, and it's funny because my wife was looking at this thing that talked about what's the least favorite side dish in every state. And Texas was allegedly cranberries. And I'm like, I don't know any Texans that don't like cranberries. Cranberries are you got to have cranberries. It just seems wrong to me.
Yeah. Stuffing and cranberries, mix them up together.
Yeah. Well, this is true. And they also had the one that I love this one. You'll get a kick out of this, Norm. They had, what's your favorite side dish? Right. And so mashed potatoes was like the number one side dish in most in most states. And then there was Virginia, and it was salad. And I love the Norm's smile just disappeared. It's like salad. You don't do salad at Thanksgiving. What are we talking about here?
No,
I'm just like, ugh. But so is that a big football day up in Canada? Do you guys have the CFL have
the CFL does have a game.
Okay. Yeah.
But we don't shut down. Like you're not going to have a dozen people in your living room wearing their favorite football jerseys. It might be on. And honestly, I'm sure more Canadians follow American football than Canadian football.
Okay. Well,
Now, the time of year is significant.
okay.
So in Canada this past weekend, it was pretty cold. You
Yeah.
can't really enjoy the
Travel, yeah.
outside. In October, it's really warm.
Hmm.
It's beautiful. The leaves start to change colors. So Thanksgiving is a vacation, or sorry, a holiday that everyone looks forward to.
Yeah.
But they also like being outside during that time because you do see that change of season. Where my
that's
in-laws live, it's a little further up north.
Mhm.
The rolling hills, the view of the lakes, and the colors of leaves, just magical.
Oh.
But Thanksgiving is a big deal. But it's not as like the country doesn't shut down like it does in the U.S. And so in the U.S., like you've got football,
You got Black Friday the next day.
Yeah, I was gonna say
everybody's
that.
going
Then you get all
shopping.
of the shopping craziness that
Yeah,
happens. Like
yeah.
we get it, and it's separate, but it's never tied to
To Thanksgiving.
a holiday. Like we're all shopping like crazy right now because the deals are so good.
Yeah.
At least that's what we're telling ourselves as we're
Wow.
racking up the credit card debt. But yeah, Thanksgiving is one of those things where it's food is similar. The premise of the holiday is similar. I bet the side dishes are quite different. I always had this thing, like I've only ever heard of a yam in an American context. I've never heard a Canadian say a yam.
Really?
So every time I think of a yam, I'm like, oh, American Thanksgiving. I don't know what they do with it, but yes.
Well, or sweet potato, right? I mean, yam or sweet potato. And it's true. We don't, I make a sweet potato casserole that is delicious. And everybody loves it, but we only really have it like twice a year.
Okay.
I mean, we do sweet potatoes occasionally. I do a meal kit, HelloFresh sometimes, and sometimes they'll send me sweet potatoes, and we'll cut them into fries. So you'll actually drizzle some olive oil on them, salt and pepper, put them in the oven, and bake them like wedge fries, and they're really good like that as well. I always sit there and go, why don't I buy more sweet potatoes at the store and do this? I for whatever reason, I don't think of it that way, but
you know why? It's because you walk by those big bins of sweet potatoes and they look like sea creatures from the bottom.
Yes, they do.
They get an eyeball, eyeballs.
Yeah, they're not quite like Yukon Gold or russet potatoes that have got that nice uniform look to them and stuff like that. But they do, and they're a little harder to peel because of that, right? Yeah. You go to peel them, and it's a little bit more difficult to go ahead and get them peeled. And they are a little starchier, I guess, or they're harder to cut. I mean, a potato, you take your knife and you can pretty much get them. A sweet potato, you kind of got to work that knife through that thing sometimes. So, I a little bit harder to eat, I guess, is one of the reasons. What about like green bean casserole? Do you guys do green bean casserole?
I think it depends on the family. It's not in our family. When if I'm preparing it and my wife is preparing it, like we're looking for the minimum path of effort to get to the table, and so it's just gonna be the traditional thing. So it's every family's got their family recipe. Ours is like this frozen vegetable casserole made with like cream of mushroom soup and cheddar cheese and crispy onion bits on top, and it doesn't sound like anything, but dang, it's really
but it's good, right? That does sound good. So now are you like mixed vegetables, or is it?
Yeah,
so like,
I think they would call it like a California mix or something like that. So broccoli, cauliflower, carrots. The more frozen it is, the better. Bakes for like almost an hour, and when it comes out, it's like you cannot believe how good it is.
Wow, that actually sounds delicious to me. I mean, I'll have to get the recipe from you sometime to give that a try, because that sounds good.
Yep.
And then the onion bits on top, like the green bean casserole, which by the way, that's like a Firefox Edge or Firefox, Google Chrome thing in a lot of places. It's you either like it or you absolutely hate it, and the like.
Yeah.
So
I'm gonna like.
Yeah.
Is that maybe Firefox or Chrome? Just kidding.
I don't know.
I'll tell you something I do like about American Thanksgiving is that the company I work for is based in the U.S. So even though I don't get to celebrate it, I do celebrate it. It's so quiet around the home office. It's like no one's bothering you except for the other Canadians that might be online. But it's and that's always been that way. So
Oh, that's cool. That's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, the grocery stores they closed down too. So
yes.
Well, yeah, yeah. Well, Norm, I want to thank you once again for being here, and I wanted to make sure that everybody is aware of, we've had the scroller going the whole time. That's got, find us on Apple or Google or Spotify or SoundCloud for the audio version of the show, and then of course, obviously, YouTube is where we're posting these things directly. It has been a real pleasure and treat having you on, Norm, and we should definitely not wait so long to have a conversation again with each other and the like. And maybe I'll see you at a conference at some point or another, and we can hang out and share an adult beverage and reminisce about the good old days and the like.
Absolutely.
Maybe we'll even drag Brian along, as opposed to having him attend remotely like he did the last time I went to a conference.
Oh boy.
I'll bring my turkey leg.
Ooh, oh, yeah, you'll pull a Dak Prescott, huh? And get that turkey leg out of the Salvation Army one there.
Exactly.
See, that's our big thing. Of course, Brian and I both living down in South Texas. We're big Cowboys fans, and so, when the Cowboys win on Thanksgiving, it's like a capstone to a great day. We have a great big meal. My family and my wife's family, we always ate around 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So you get this great meal, and then you're done, and then you watch the Cowboys game. And after that, we might go see a movie, right? Or something in the evening. It just kind of depends. And it's always nice when the team wins. And then when they lose, you're kind of like, oh, I got to go see a movie now to get this out of my head, kind of thing. So, we'll get there. But once again, thank you. And like I said, we're up to 10 subscribers on YouTube. So, hey, go out there, hit the like, hit the subscribe, share it with your friends, share it with your family. Even if they have no idea what we're talking about, just have them go out and do this. I'll admit, being in double digits in subscribers is really exciting after a fashion. We've joked about, the 3 people that watch our show. But you can contact us, go to the cloudwhispers.net. So cloudwhispers.net, and you'll get the show notes, and you can contact us there. You can send us an email, and let us know how we're doing. Let us know what you like, what you don't like, because we can make the show better that way, and have on cool people like Norm, which will always make the show better and the like. So with that,
Norm.
everybody,
Thank you.
yeah, I'll say that to everybody, and really appreciate everybody being on. And so as we go out to our wonderful Cloud Whispers here, I will bid everybody adieu. And whether you're in Canada or the US or anyplace else, enjoy yourselves going forward. Thank you, everybody. Have a good one.
See you, everyone. Thanks for having me.
Bye.